The Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries will essentially be a moment where we are waking up in the matrix, and historically, this conjunction has been accompanied by the dissolution of structures that were once considered invincible, such as the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Russian Revolution. And so Saturn, which is the planet of structure and discipline, is meeting with Neptune, which is the planet of the collective, ideals, illusions, and dreams. And this creates a time where the veil will thin and structures may fall, but new ones will be born. And since this is happening in the sign of Aries, themes of initiation, how we exert our will, individual power, and the energy of go will be prevalent. And this is heightened by the fact that on February 20th, when the conjunction goes exact, Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, will be in Aquarius just 3 days after a solar eclipse in the same sign. And so whatever is falling or being built or being unveiled has the power to really shake us out of complacency, awaken our free will, or at the very least make us realize our actual power to act. Granted, this transit may be felt for a few months or even the entirety of 2026, but this is definitely going to be the peak window to watch out for. And because of that specific electric backdrop of the Mars placement and the eclipse, this atmosphere could feel wired and volatile and could feel like a sudden zip. I don't know why I did that. On top of being potentially foggy and heavy, as it really combines the energies of Saturn and Neptune, which kind of are very different if you think about it. And it's kind of like drinking caffeine while pulling an all-nighter, really cramming for an exam that you're not ready for. You know that feeling. I think we all do. And whether this is a larger structure or event that unveils this potential, or a subtle but powerful shift in the collective consciousness, or just a shock to our system sparking us to take action, that we will have to see. Regardless, watching our energy is key, and since Aries is ruled by Mars, whatever energy this conjunction brings could wire our will and either inspire us to move or overwhelm our systems and cause us to burn out or stall within the system overload. And so being intentional with how we exert ourselves is absolute key in my opinion. And because even if we realize our capacity to act, we can't just automatically drive the car 10,000 miles without stopping for gas or taking a bathroom break or refueling, because Saturn's role here will require us to learn to care for our vehicles as we go on the journey. And since Saturn is technically uncomfortable in the sign of Aries, this structure won't feel smooth. It'll really feel like the brakes on a race car, if that makes sense, really forcing us to be responsible, intentional, and disciplined with how we exert ourselves at this time. But with Neptune involved as well, we also need to ensure that we are driving to the correct location, because shattered illusions or a spark of new dreams can really throw our sense of direction for a loop. And with the excitement of Aries, it's easy to just drive on the first road we see and arrive at a bad destination, meaning we exert our energy in the wrong direction, or we could neglect our car and our boundaries in the process. And so the bad news about this transit is that we really cannot ensure that everyone is going to properly know how to drive their car. But the good news is that at least we can drive our own car. And while we cannot control everything, this tutorial is designed to help you manage your car and your life to the very best of your ability. And so not only will this forecast be based on your rising sign, which really tells you what area of life you're kind of going to feel this pressurized energy in, but I will also be going over the forecast based on your natal Mars placement by sign or house. And the reason I chose Mars this time is that as somebody with a natal Saturn in Aries, how you exert your energy is absolutely key at this time. And so I wanted to provide applicable tips and tricks and a forecast based on your Mars placement so that you know how you can properly refuel yourself and act at this time so that you don't burn out and you can actually make the most of this energy. And so now that we have that out of the way, go down to the timestamps, look for your placements, and let's get to the heart of the matter in 3, 2, 1, go. For you, Aries Rising, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening directly to you, inside you, or through you. And since this hits your first house of self, physical vitality, and identity, you could essentially become the living embodiment of this energy, or you could feel it very potently. And the physical feeling here could feel a little bit confusing because your first house kind of acts as the windshield through which you can see reality through. And so when the glass gets foggy or cracks, your whole worldview could shift. And so I would pay attention to see if you feel a heavy weight on your physical energy, kind of like you're wearing a vest made out of lead, while also feeling sponge-like or sensitive, or like your boundaries are melting. And you may look in the mirror and struggle to recognize the person staring back. And this happens because the internal definition of who you are could be getting rewritten at this time. And with your chart ruler of Mars in that electric position in Aquarius we discussed just before the conjunction goes exact, you could also feel a frantic urge to fix or redefine yourself immediately, like trying to sprint through water. However, Saturn and Neptune are likely doing deep underground work, and it can feel like shedding a layer of skin, but taking a long time, possibly leaving you feeling raw, exposed, and physically tired in a way that sleep can't easily fix. And this caffeine and all-nighter energy could show up very directly and be felt in your body, and you could feel a buzz of anxiety about your life path layered over a deep exhaustion that is asking you to stop performing the version of Aries you thought you had to be. And so in the real world, this can show up a few specific ways. And so externally, for example, you could see a mysterious or confusing shift in your physical health or your energy levels, or you could experience a time of lower energy or vague physical sensitivity that really forces you to start a strict, disciplined health routine to handle it. And so you could learn that your car cannot run on fumes anymore, and that you have to learn how your own engine works. But another scenario involves maybe dropping a label or a role that you have held for years. Perhaps you've always been a fighter or the independent one or the leader, and suddenly that label you own could feel too heavy. And so you could step down from a leadership role or just admit that you're vulnerable. And this could feel scary but necessary, as you may be dissolving the ego structure that kept you safe but lonely. But a third example could be a total makeover or a change in your style or how you identify that is a complete 360 from who you once were. And you could feel a strong need to change your hair, maybe your clothes or your name or just even your personality. And so the old presentation can feel like a costume that doesn't fit anymore. And this can act as an attempt to match your outer look or your inner identity really with the shifting reality of what is happening to your inner self. And you can act as the sculptor, really trying to carve a new face or identity out of the mist, whether this is internal or external. And so the warning during this transit is very specific. Do not try to drive your car through the fog at 100 miles per hour. And so the danger for Aries risings really come from the conflict between your natural speed, or at least your go-getter energy, and the reality of the road conditions. And so if you try to force a definition or try to force a result or force your will on the world right now without respecting how fragile you feel, you could risk burnout, maybe even injury, or at least a crisis of confidence. And there is a risk of deceiving yourself about how much you can handle, or conversely, dissolving into insecurity where you feel you have no control at all. However, the opportunity for this transit is massive, because this could be a moment of spiritual maturity, and you have the chance to rebuild your identity on a foundation of real self-knowledge rather than what you think you have to be, or the adrenaline of constant action. And so Saturn could help you build a barrier for the deep waters of Neptune. So if you slow down and let the old version of you dissolve without panicking, you can come out of this with a formidable and powerful presence, and you will likely be powerful because you are authentic and because you are walking through life exactly how you want to be. And you could learn that you don't need to fight to exist. You just need to be. And you are potentially waking up from the illusion that you are only valuable when you are winning or conquering, because the truth is you are valuable simply because you are here, and the action and energy you naturally provide to the world can help you birth a new version of yourself that is truly ready to tackle the world. For you, Taurus Rising, this energy can feel slippery, hidden, and internal because it lands in your 12th house. And so this is the house of the subconscious, hidden things, deep spirituality, and also mental health. And so think of the first house as the front door. And so the 12th house is kind of like the basement or the attic where you store everything you avoid looking at. And so this Saturn Neptune conjunction can act like someone turning on the lights in that basement or that attic and finding it filled with smoke. And so physically, this could feel like a deep need to withdrawal. You could feel a heaviness in your spirit or a mental fogginess that makes the practical world feel miles away, or maybe there's a sudden struggle to keep your emotions in check. And so the veil could also feel like it is thinning literally for you. So maybe your dreams could become incredibly vivid, or your intuition could become loud and distracting, or maybe even powerful. And so with the zap of Mars and the eclipse happening in your 10th house of career and public image at the same time, the tension is very unique. And so maybe the outside world, whether it comes to your career or your ambitions, could feel very wired, electric, and demanding, like that caffeine all-nighter energy, while your soul is really demanding that you retreat or sleep or process. And it could feel like having to give a big presentation, or maybe you need to try to achieve something big while also having an existential crisis or reflection period at the same time. So you could simply feel like your public ambitions are hollow because a ghost in your private life needs attention. But this could also show up even as something regarding how your career and ambitions connect to your subconscious. Like maybe one is the culprit for the shortcoming of the other, if that makes sense. And so since this is a very private transit, the examples often will happen behind closed doors, but could show up internally or externally. Remember that. And so one major scenario could be a reckoning with mental health or rest. So maybe you find that the push through it method stops working entirely, and you could hit a wall of exhaustion that really forces you to take a break, maybe start some serious therapy, or maybe committing to a disciplined spiritual practice. And instead of just chilling, you are likely doing the hard work of structured healing to build a better subconscious. But another example involves maybe revealing hidden enemies or self-sabotaging behaviors. And because Saturn in the 12th tends to really highlight the things we do to sabotage ourselves, so you could suddenly maybe realize that a specific habit, an addiction, or a secret mindset has been draining your gas tank all along. And so this can really be a moment of sobriety where you see your own self-sabotage and decide to take it apart. But a third example could be maybe working in total isolation on a project that requires massive discipline but gets zero public credit right now. Think of the writer in the cabin or the coder, in their basement on their computer. And so you are likely building something massive in the dark, really using the inspiration of Neptune and the discipline of Saturn, preparing for when this energy eventually moves to the light. And so the warning for you during this transit is the trap of isolation really turning into desolation, because the 12th house could be a very lonely place. And with Saturn here, there is a danger of becoming rigid in your loneliness, thinking no one understands me, and then locking the door. But there's also the risk of the Neptune side, like escapism. And because the external world can feel high pressure at this time, you could be tempted to numb out or check out or dissolve into fantasies rather than doing the work. And so the bad destination for your car is driving off the map entirely because you're afraid of the road. But the opportunity is so incredibly deep. And because you have the potential to clear out your karmic closet once and for all this time, if you use Saturn's discipline to navigate Neptune's waters at this time, meaning you could meditate with structure or rest with intention and face your shadows with a plan, you could achieve a level of inner peace that is bulletproof. And you are preparing to be reborn when Saturn eventually enters Taurus or your first house. But right now you're kind of in the womb. It could feel dark or cramped and mysterious, but if you do the work here, you ensure that when you do step back into the light, you can do so without dragging any baggage behind you. For you, Gemini Rising, this Saturn-Neptune conjunction hits the sector of your chart that governs your groups, your networks, and your long-term vision for the future or society, which is the 11th house. And this can be a waking up in the matrix moment regarding who you surround yourself with and maybe where you fit into the collective. And so the physical sensation here could feel like a strange sense of social vertigo. And so you could be standing in a room full of people, maybe your usual friends or colleagues, maybe people that you work with, or you could be in a bubble with an online network and then suddenly feel a wave of alienation, or like the frequency has shifted and you can no longer tune into the station that you used to tune into so easily, and this can feel like being alone in a crowded room. And then with the zap of Mars and the eclipse happening in your ninth house of beliefs or higher learning, your mind could be racing with new philosophies, new horizons, or a desperate need for truth, while your social reality could feel heavy, confusing, or restrictive. And so you could feel wired, intellectually restless to explore new territories. Maybe you want to expand your horizons or vocalize your beliefs, but you kind of feel anchored down by not knowing how to network, or maybe social obligations or a peer group could suddenly feel like an illusion that you have outgrown. And so this can create tension between the you who is expanding your worldview and the community that expects you to stay the same, or it could feel like maybe trying to figure out how to create the connections and find your role in society to align with these new insights that you are developing. And so in the wild, this energy could look like a group audit or a restructuring of your network, or at the very least, your role within those networks. So one potential scenario is the slow dissolving fade out of a friendship group that wants to find you. And so rather than a dramatic explosion, it could look more like a Neptune sort of energy eroding the shore of the connection. And so you could realize that shared values that you used to hold together were perhaps an illusion or a habit, really leading Saturn to step in and ask you to set boundaries or leave the party entirely. And so you could also be sobering up from the social intoxication. So another example maybe involves your relationship to your goals or your role in society or your audience if you have one. And so maybe you could have been chasing a specific dream or maybe a career milestone only to really realize that the dream was a mirage. And this forces a hard pivot where you likely have to structurally redesign what your future actually looks like, really stripping away the goals that were influenced by maybe peer pressure or conditioning rather than your authentic desire. But a third, more subtle manifestation of this transit is becoming a serious dreamer with a community. Maybe you could take on a role of heavy responsibility within an organization, maybe a non-for-profit or a collective movement, or maybe simply you just dream and realize that you want to do so, even if you're not doing it yet. And you could feel driven to become the one building the structure for the shared vision, really moving from just being a member of a group to being the one who keeps the roof from collapsing. And so the warning of this transit could be tricky for a social sign like yours, so beware of the echo chamber and the cult of personality, because with Neptune in the 11th, it is really easy to get swept up in a collective delusion or maybe a group movement that promises a utopia but delivers nothing. And the danger also involves maybe driving your car blindly, really following a group only to realize that the leader is lost and they don't know what they're doing. But conversely, the Saturn sign also brings this danger of cynicism, maybe becoming so disillusioned with humanity or your friends that you isolate yourself completely, becoming a hermit because people just don't get it. And so you want to avoid letting your car run out of gas in the middle of nowhere because you refused to ask for directions. But the opportunity, however, is to find your real people or even find your true mission within society, because the transit can clear out the fair weather friends, but also the superficial connections to make space for maybe a group that is aligned with your soul's maturity or a cause that is also aligned with such. And so you are learning that community is less about fitting in and more about shared responsibility, enduring support, and really having things in common. And so you have the chance to build a network that now serves as a sturdy vehicle for your wildest hopes and dreams rather than just for fun. Cancer risings, you could be one of the main characters of this energy from this transit because it hits the very top of your chart, the 10th house. And so this is the sector of your career, your public reputation, your legacy, but also the boss figures in your life and your ability to take leadership as well. And so the waking up in the matrix moment for you could involve realizing that the ladder that you have been climbing could be leaning against the wrong wall, or that the glass ceiling that you have been staring at is actually made of smoke. And so physically, this can feel like an immense crushing weight on your shoulders, really combined with a sense of directional vertigo. And so you could feel the pressure to be someone or to lead a charge. But when you look at the map, the destination keeps changing and it could be a little bit confusing. And adding to this intensity is the zap of Mars and the eclipse happening in your 8th house of shared resources, debt, and deep psychological undercurrents. And so this could be a heavy wired combination. And it's like the caffeine all-nighter is kind kind of happening in the depths of your psyche, which could create anxiety about money or intimacy, maybe power dynamics or deep psychology. But you kind of still have to show up for work the next day and give a perfect presentation, which could be stressful, but you could also feel a desperate or wired urge to transform your life from the inside out, which maybe causes some tremors in your public goals. And it could feel like being naked on stage. Maybe you feel exposed, vulnerable, but undeniably powerful if you can own it. And so in the real world, this transit can manifest as major career sobriety. And so one example is maybe the disillusionment with an industry or specific role that you once idealized could take place. And maybe you could have spent years working to become a manager or an expert, only to arrive and realize that the title doesn't really feel how you expected it to, or maybe the industry is even crumbling in some cases, and you are likely fundamentally restructuring your contribution to society, or at the very least, you now feel a new call to do so, even if that action has to wait a bit. But another potential scenario involves a shift with authority figures, maybe parents or bosses, so you could see a mentor or a parent maybe fall from grace or simply reveal their humanity in some way. And so the illusion that they know what they're doing could shatter, really forcing you to become the authority figure that you were waiting for. But a third example is maybe a public rebranding in some way. That could feel confusing at first. Maybe you could be known for one thing, and then suddenly you feel compelled to dissolve that image and build a reputation based on something a lot more authentic than the front that you were used to embracing. And so you are trying to build your goals out of your true dreams, which is like trying to build a castle on this cloud. It's possible, but it really requires very, very, very intentional engineering. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of fogginess with your ambitions, or even fogginess with yourself through public scandal. And in some cases, this could be very public, but in some cases it's more internal. And so with Neptune in the 10th, your actions can easily be misinterpreted, or you could project an image that isn't true, really leading to a fall when Saturn kind of comes in to check the receipts. And the danger also involves driving your car to a destination that isn't truly aligned with you, maybe because you think you should be doing this thing only to realize you have no gas to get back home. But there's also a warning about boundaries at work, so try to avoid martyring yourself for a company that only cares about the bottom line. But the opportunity of this transit is legendary, so you have the chance to become a visionary leader and to get real about your true path. And so if you can combine Saturn's discipline with Neptune's empathy, for example, you can build a path for yourself that is healing, inspiring, and also structurally sound. And you are learning that true authority is usually about responsibility and vision, and letting the two marry is so key. And you can step into a role where you are the spiritual CEO of your own life, really commanding respect and finding a path to succeed because your authenticity and vision is just too sound to fail. For you, Leo risings, this Saturn-Neptune conjunction will land in your 9th house, which is the sector of higher learning, foreign travel, philosophy, but also your internal compass. And this is the part of the chart that asks, why are we here? And what is the truth? And what is my purpose? Or what is the meaning of life? And so the waking up in the matrix moment for you could act as a crisis of faith or a massive expansion of consciousness that can feel very vast. And so physically, this could feel like existential vertigo, and it's kind of the sensation of standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out at the horizon that is foggy and unrecognizable. And so you could feel a deep intellectual heaviness where the ideas or beliefs you used to lean on, whether it's religious, political, or just your personal code, could suddenly dissolve under your feet. And so the zap or the caffeine in this scenario could come from Mars and the eclipse in your 7th house of relationships, partnerships, and how you connect one-on-one. And so this can create a very interesting dynamic. So maybe the electricity, the volatility, and the shock could come from another person challenging you, maybe a sudden relationship shift, or maybe an electric new connection, either platonic or romantic, or it could just simply come from a shift in how you want to relate. And that interpersonal energy could force you to pull an all-nighter, really reevaluating your entire philosophy on life. And it can feel like having a heated debate that really leaves you questioning the very fabric of reality. And so in practice, this can potentially look like a pilgrimage of your soul. And so one literal example could be a journey, maybe like traveling to a foreign country or a new environment. But instead of a vacation, it feels kind of like this mission. So maybe maybe you encounter delays, confusion, or getting lost, which forces you to rely on a deeper inner resilience, and you are likely searching for meaning at this time, whether internally or externally. And so another potential scenario involves a major pivot in either education or expertise, and so you could realize the degree you are chasing or the subject you are studying is an illusion that no longer fits in your life, or there is a hole within what you are pursuing, prompting you to either drop it or adjust your methods, or to switch to something much more serious, spiritual, or difficult. And so maybe you essentially become the student, realizing the textbook is wrong and you are deciding what you want to do about it. But a third example involves the legal or publishing world, and so maybe you could be working on getting a message out there, such as publishing a book or launching a course. But maybe you face structural hurdles in some way or confusion about the message you want to put out there. And so you could be attempting to solidify a dream into a philosophy that others can understand, which is grueling work. But now it's about realizing how much work it will actually take to do this. And so the warning of this transit involves the trap of dogma or a guru complex. And so with Neptune in the ninth, there is a risk of falling for a false teacher, maybe a cult-like belief system, or a get enlightened quick scheme, because you feel super driven to find all the answers. But on the flip side, there is a danger of becoming this rigid judge, thinking that your truth is the only truth because you are scared of the uncertainty. And the danger also lies kind of in driving your car off a cliff because you're so convinced that the GPS was wrong that you ignored the road in sign. But the opportunity is to gain true wisdom at this time, because there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And so this transit really strips away the superficial things you thought you believed so that you can find a core truth that actually supports you when the sky is falling, and you can really build a personal philosophy that is weatherproof at this time. And so by the end of this transit, you can have potential not to just believe in something, but you could also find the confidence in what you do believe in because you wrestled with whatever those beliefs are in the dark, which could really restructure how you approach the world for years to come. For you, Virgo Rising, this transit could feel like it is dragging you into the deep end of the pool since it is happening in your 8th house. And so this is the sector of shared resources, deep psychology, debt, intimacy, and the deepest corners of our life. And so the waking up in the matrix moment here could involve realizing that your energetic or financial or emotional entanglements with others are not what they seem in some way. And so physically, this can feel like a knot in your stomach or a heavy brooding intensity that sits just beneath your calm surface. And so you are kind of a sign that generally likes to keep things together, but the 8th house is a bit complex or messy by definition. And so with the zap of Mars and the eclipse happening in your 6th house of daily routines, health, and work, the contrast could be jarring. And so your day-to-day life could be buzzing with electricity in some way. Maybe your to-do list is on fire, your nervous system is wired, and your work environment could kind of feel like a circus. However, underneath the busyness, you are likely pulling an emotional all-nighter, really processing deep fears about trust, control, and mortality that you are dealing with. And so it can kind of feel like scrubbing the kitchen floor while having a very deep realization maybe about your marriage or your debts. And so it can feel like trying to maintain order in the physical world while the emotional ground beneath you is kind of shaking, and it can feel a little bit off-center. And so just as some examples, this energy can potentially be financial or very deeply vulnerable or interpersonal. So one scenario could be that there's this financial reality check of a partner or maybe like a business partner, for example. And so you could discover that maybe a partner's finances or your own shared debts like a credit card debt or a student loan are kind of in a fog. Maybe the taxes weren't paid or spending was hidden. You had like a hidden, subscription you didn't know about, whether it's like from yourself or another person that kind of has this like hidden dynamic. And now you have to step in as this kind of stern accountant to really fix the structure. And so you could be the one cleaning up this intense situation at this time. But another example of how this could play out involves the navigation of boundaries with intimacy. And so you could feel a desperate need to merge with someone, for example, or to dissolve into them, but simultaneously feel like a wall of fear or a need for self-preservation in some way. And so this pushes you to do the shadow work, really confronting why you are afraid of being vulnerable, or conversely, why you give too much of yourself away if you tend to go to that extreme. And then a third example really involves the deepest parts of your psychology. Maybe it's as simple as you realizing an energetic or an emotional debt that you've been holding on to. Or maybe you could realize the source that's been making you feel drained. And because of this, you feel this intense and active need to cut off the source of these drained feelings, even if you find it complicated in some ways to do so. And so the warning of this transit is quite literal. Watch your assets, watch your energy, and check the fine print. Because with the Neptune in the 8th house, there is this danger of financial deception or simply leaking energy or money or a shared resource because you aren't fully paying attention. And so try to be intentional with your energy in all the ways possible. This includes emotional, tangible, and contractual, and also avoid signing any contracts. This includes if you apply for like a credit card, for example, until this fog clears and you are 100% confident in whatever you are signing, but also ensure that everything you commit to will offer you value so that your energy doesn't leak in ways that doesn't suit you. But the opportunity of this transit actually is true empowerment. And because the 8th house is the house of power, by facing these fears, whether they are financial debts or emotional ghosts, you could reclaim the energy that you had tied up in them. And so Saturn can help you build a structure for your own power, really ensuring that you are no longer dependent on systems or people that drain you. And you can learn that true security rarely comes from controlling every detail of your day, but rather from trusting your ability to survive the crisis and to get through it and to actually have a plan of getting yourself through tougher times. And so it is a time to become bulletproof if you really spend your energy wisely and to create a new and better way of approaching all of the intense and deep parts of your life. For you, Libra Rising, this Saturn-Neptune conjunction lands in the most sensitive part of your chart, or one of them at the very least, because it is an angular house, the 7th house of relationships, partnerships, one-on-one connections, and also open enemies. It's just how you connect with another person. And as a sign that understands yourself through the mirror of others, this kind of acts as a waking up in the matrix moment where your mirror could suddenly crack, or perhaps it can turn into a window. And so physically, this can feel like a distinct heaviness in your interactions. So you could feel a weight when you are around other people, whether it's your idea of relationships, whether it's romantic relationships, platonic relationships, or business connections. But also you could just feel a sense that the contract of your relationships in some way are kind of being rewritten without your consent. And so the veil is likely thinning regarding who people actually are versus who you hoped they were, if that makes sense. And so adding to this potential energy is the zap of Mars in the eclipse happening in your 5th house of romance, creativity, pleasure, and children at this time. And so this kind of acts like the caffeine in the equation. So maybe you could have this electric, wired urge to have fun, maybe to fall in love, to create art, or to take a big risk. But every time that you try to launch that rocket, maybe you seem to get hit with the heavy, confusing atmosphere of your connections or your partnerships, and it can feel like trying to have a passionate, spontaneous date night, for example, while pulling an all-nighter, really processing the structural integrity of how you relate to others and whether your fun is even worth it because of the value of connection within that. And so you are likely really vibrating with creative energy, but there could be a pressure on what it takes to actually take things to a more serious level when it comes to other people or even your pursuits in some cases. And so in the real world, this energy could manifest almost exclusively through other people, or at least how you relate to others. So one potential scenario is maybe like the disillusionment of how you connect. And so, for example, maybe you could have put a partner, whether it's romantic or platonic, on a pedestal, and Saturn is now brutally knocking them down. And rather than necessarily breaking it off, you could just be seeing them without a filter, maybe with their flaws and their baggage and all. Or you could be put in a position where you must care for that person now. Maybe you are forced to decide if you can love the reality of the people around you instead of just the dream of them. And another example is this sort of cleaning of the mirror. So maybe you could realize either through how you relate or through connection itself, a habit that bothers you when it comes to connection, only to reflect on that later at night and then realize that you are the culprit for the exact same thing that you despise, really seeing yourself as a mirror that is now insanely clean, and this could be a little bit jarring to you. But a third example of how this transit could play out is maybe there's a creative collaboration, because with this 5th and 7th house dynamic, maybe you launch a creative project that requires you to sign a contract that could be confusing, But also it could just be legally binding in a way that you didn't anticipate, and that could cause a little bit of fear. And so you could be trying to formalize a dream, but the fine print maybe sparks some uncertainty around you and you don't know whether it's the right move. And so the warning of this transit is the classic Libra trap, codependency really masquerading as love, or trying to see too much good in something or someone bad, because with Neptune in the 7th, there is a massive danger of losing your boundaries or merging so completely with another person's chaos that you forget that you are driving your own car, or you forget what you look like in the process. And the danger also involves letting someone else take the wheel because they are telling you a very pretty story. Oh, I'm a perfect driver, don't worry about it. Only to realize that they are driving you off a cliff. But also try to avoid signing contracts when you are emotional and avoid assuming someone will save you. But the opportunity of this transit is huge because it is the chance to discover yourself and to discover how connection is meant to be in your life, because Saturn will ask you to build connection structures that can actually hold you without selling your soul. And you are moving away from this fairy tale idea of connection, which could be fragile, towards more real connection, which is sturdy. And the transit could clear out the people who are just projections of your own ego, but it could also help you redefine yourself within this process. And so the best way this can play out is really learning how to approach every connection and interaction, learning how to be discerning within that, and then learning your role within that in a way that places proper value on you. Scorpio risings, this transit could be incredibly physical for you because it is happening in your 6th house of health, daily rituals, the workplace, and the physical body. And so you're waking up in the matrix moment for you could likely involve realizing that your body or your routine is not a robotic machine that you can just drive into the ground, or at the very least, even if you realize this already, it could be, amplified in some way. And so there's this sensitivity about your body that could currently be glitching a little bit. And the physical sensation here could be a confusing mix of maybe heaviness or sensitivity. So maybe you could feel like you are walking through mud while simultaneously picking up every germ, vibe, or pollutant in the air. And so the veil is thinning between you and your physical health or your day-to-day life and your spiritual state and mental hygiene. And so if you have been ignoring your body or if you've been overworking, Saturn could pull the emergency brake. But here's the kicker. Your chart ruler Mars is in that electric wired conjunction with the eclipse in your 4th house of home, family, and roots. And so this provides the caffeine part of the equation. And so maybe your home life, your living situation, or your innermost self or your family dynamic could feel volatile, buzzy, or like a construction zone, really preventing you from getting that deep rest your body is screaming for. But there could also be this realization of maybe the structural flaws within your work and how you want to spend your days. And it is this specific feeling of being physically exhausted. Maybe you're dealing with a vague health issue or maybe just burnout, but being able to rest because the fire alarm is kind of going off in your home or in your living room, or at least in your mind. And so you are trying to heal the vessel while, the private roots of yourself are kind of under renovation. And the nature of what is happening here will be illuminated, and it can provide you maybe with, insight on what actually needs to change. And so in the real world, this energy could bring about a need for a lifestyle audit. So one potential scenario is maybe you get a mystery diagnosis. Maybe you experience a physical symptom that is hard to pin down, maybe like fatigue or allergies or gut issues, which really forces you to become incredibly disciplined and structured about your diet and your routine to manage it. And with this conjunction, managing it becomes impossible to ignore. And so you could be learning to become your own doctor because the old ways of just powering through aren't working. But another example is a total disillusion of your work environment in some way. So maybe the job that you show up to every day could suddenly feel like a house of mirrors. Maybe management is confusing. Maybe your responsibilities are kind of blurry. Or maybe you just have a sense of, what am I even doing here? And you could find yourself having to be the one that's like the structured person in the workplace that is completely falling apart. Or conversely, maybe you feel like calling to leave that job to pursue work that can feel more like a calling and maybe doesn't drain you as much. But a third example links the 4th and 6th houses. Maybe you could be taking care of a family member or dealing with a crisis, even if it's your own crisis at home, that really forces you to completely restructure your daily schedule, leaving you with, zero time for fun or for yourself, but giving you a need to manage both. And so you could become the nurse kind of in this war zone, and adapting to this will be key. And so the warning of this transit is the danger of burnout really masquerading as resilience. You could think that you're being resilient, but you're actually burning your body out. And so as a Scorpio rising, you do love to endure. You're ruled by Mars and Pluto. I get it, but you pride yourself on how much pain you can take sometimes. But with this Saturn Neptune conjunction in the 6th, that check engine light could act as a command rather than a suggestion. And so the danger involves driving your car when you know the oil is leaking because you don't want to look weak. And this could lead to this engine failure in your life. There's also risk of maybe hypochondria or psychosomatic illness, really worrying yourself sick because the fog of Neptune kind of prevents you from seeing the reality of your health or your work habits. But the opportunity of this transit is ritual mastery because you have the chance to turn your daily life into a spiritual practice. This is so much more than just your life together. It's about aligning your physical body with your soul's purpose or with the mode of operating at the very least, because Aries is ruled by Mars that can stand the test of time and actually fuel you. And if you can use Saturn's discipline to create a routine that honors Neptune's need for flow and rest, you can build a body or a lifestyle that can weather any storm. And you are learning that the most spiritual thing you can do right now is get your 8 hours of sleep and drink water and pay attention to your needs, because this is the absolute key to making the most of this transit. For you, Sagittarius Rising, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction hits the part of your chart that usually brings the fun, which is the 5th house. So this is kind of the sector of romance, creativity, children, self-expression, and joy. And so the waking up in the matrix moment for you could involve realizing that fun is less about distraction and now more about purpose. Or it could be about realizing what actually strips you of this joy and how can you get that back. And so physically, this can feel like a dampening of your usual spark, and so you could feel a creative block or a sense that the things that used to bring you joy now feel surprisingly hollow or draining. And so while you are a sign that usually loves to say yes to life, Saturn here is kind of teaching you the power of no, or at the very least, it is showing you of what has to be stripped for you to actually be able to say yes and to stop denying yourself. And so adding to this complexity is the zap of Mars and the eclipse happening in your 3rd house of communication, mindset, and immediate environment. And so this kind of acts as the caffeine in the system. So your mind could be racing. Maybe your inbox is exploding and you could have an electric, perhaps argumentative conversation, all while your heart can feel heavy, serious, or confused. And this conversation, by the way, could be with others or even with yourself. And it can feel like being at a loud party where everybody is talking at you or your thoughts are talking at you, but you are sitting in the corner feeling very sober, wondering if you even like this music anymore. And so you are wondering what fun even means to you. And so you may be mentally wired and emotionally you are likely undergoing this maturation or, maturity sort of growth at this time. And so in the real world, this can manifest as taking fun seriously. So one potential scenario is maybe the professionalization of a hobby. And so you could take something you love, whether painting, writing, gaming, your love for children, could be anything, and you could decide to turn it into a structured career or a serious masterpiece, or you could simply just realize that you want to do this. And so the fun could dissolve into work, which is grueling, but it allows you to build something authentic rather than just playing around. But another example, maybe you get a sobering reality check in romance. Maybe you're in a situationship or a romance, or maybe you have this idea of romance that feels dreamy and undefined, and then suddenly Saturn slams that gavel down, forcing you to either commit to a structure or to end it or to get realistic about what you want. And so the rose-colored glasses will likely come off, really forcing you to look at whether, this person or this idea of relationship actually fits into the architecture of your life. And so a third example could involve children or the idea of children. This is only for some people, obviously. Maybe you could be dealing with a heavy responsibility of parenthood, and maybe that can feel overwhelming and exhausting, or you could be seriously contemplating whether or not you want to bring life into this world, really feeling the gravity of that choice in a way that you never have before, even if you never really thought about it before. And you are realizing that creation is more than an act of joy. It is an act of responsibility. And in order to truly channel joy and create with your heart and soul, some serious restructuring could be needed. And so the warning of this transit involves the trap of feeling numb or an inability to really feel pleasure, because with Saturn sitting on your joy center, there is a danger of becoming so serious or so disciplined or so disillusioned with discovering your joy that you forget what actual play looks like. And you could convince yourself that joy is useless close or that you don't deserve it unless you've kind of finished the work. And the danger also lies in driving your car strictly for business for so long that you forget that you can roll the windows down and enjoy that nice, easy, breezy, beautiful air. And so it is important to really try to avoid letting your inner child die of boredom. But the opportunity is really the birth of a masterpiece, because Saturn in the 5th is this placement of the great artist. And so if you can push through the resistance and the creative sort of fogginess you're experiencing, and if you allow yourself to listen to your body and joy, even if it challenges your worldviews or your energy, you can really create something, whether a relationship, a piece of art, a child, or a project that is enduring, deep, and this can change the trajectory of your life. And you are moving away from fleeting happiness towards deep satisfaction. And you can learn that the greatest joy often comes from sustained devotion to what you love rather than the sugar rush of the new. But the most important thing is finding out what this will actually look like in your life and how you can actually take action towards this. Capricorn Risings, this is an insanely significant transit for you because Saturn is technically your chart ruler. So wherever Saturn goes, you also go and you feel it very strongly. So right now your ruling planet is meeting up with Neptune in your 4th house, which is the absolute basement of your chart, really representing your home, your family, your ancestry, but also your emotional foundations. And so the waking up in the matrix moment for you could involve realizing that the foundation you have built on your life could be very open or porous or shifting, or at the very least in need of massive repair. And this transit could trigger a moment that makes this realization clear. And so physically, this can feel like a deep sense of heaviness. So you could feel a gravitational pull to maybe stay home or to hibernate or to withdraw from the world. But the atmosphere inside that home could feel heavy, maybe damp or confusing. And it can feel like walking on floorboards that feel soft and then wondering if there is actually rot underneath the foundation. And so adding to this pressure is the zap of Mars and the eclipse happening in your 2nd house of money, values, earned income. And this kind of provides the caffeine in your system. So you could have a wired electric urgency to maybe make money, secure your assets, or to address your confidence issues or your self-worth, or to handle a volatile financial situation in your life. But you are doing it while your home life or emotional security can feel like it's underwater, or maybe you're doing it because you want to improve your home life in some way. And so it can feel like working a double shift to pay for a house that has a leak in a roof, even if that's more metaphorical. And so you could be hustling for security in the material world while you're trying to shore up the crumbling walls of your private world, which can feel intense, but it's a dynamic that you are ready to address. So in the real world, this energy can be incredibly literal regarding your living situation. Maybe one potential scenario is there's this renovation kind of from hell. And so you could discover a structural issue in your home related to water, mold, maybe plumbing, that could force you to tear things apart to fix them. And so in order to have the safety and security of a place that you live in, things must be addressed head on in order for things to settle. But another example is maybe there's a shift in the family hierarchy, specifically involving your parents. Maybe you find yourself having to parent your parents in some way. Maybe you're stepping into a role of heavy responsibility to care for a family member who is aging or maybe sick. And so the illusion of them being the strong ones could dissolve, and maybe you have to take the weight now. But a third example is maybe there's this psychological relocation. Maybe you feel a desperate need to move or to leave your hometown or to uproot yourself because the place you came from no longer feels like the real you. And so this can be an internal or an external sort of feeling. Keep that in mind. And so you could be really putting in the work to redefine what home means to you. And you could have to live in a state of limbo before the new keys actually land in your hand, whether it's like the metaphorical keys or even literal keys. And so the warning of this transit is the danger of emotional stagnation, because with Saturn in the 4th, there is a risk of becoming too cold, rigid, or defensive in your private life because you are afraid of the flood of emotions that Neptune could bring, and you could make the mistake of believing that caging your emotions is what responsibility looks like. So you say, oh, I'm being strong by not letting my emotions out. And so the danger kind of looks like locking yourself in the house and refusing to open the windows, letting the air get stale and toxic. And there's also a warning about real estate in some niche instances, so be careful buying or selling property right now. Ensure the inspection is thorough because Neptune can bring birth to new ideals that are foggy, even if it breaks down old ones that are also foggy. But the opportunity of this transit is to really understand how to break out of old stagnant patterns, and you are being given the chance to heal generational trauma because Saturn stops the cycle and Neptune dissolves the pain. So if you do the work here, you can end patterns that have plagued you or your family for decades, and you can build a new foundation for yourself that is based on who you actually are rather than what you've been conditioned to be. And you have the opportunity to become the true patriarch or the matriarch of your own life, but it's about following a path that is authentic to the deepest parts of your soul and really allows you to develop a completely new definition of what security looks like in the process. For you, Aquarius Rising, this transit happens in the command center of your daily life, the third house. And so this is the sector of your brain, your speech, your communication, your immediate environment, but also your mindset. And so this waking up in the matrix moment for you is likely very cognitive. And so maybe you realize that the way you think or the words you use and the scripts you have been reading from are kind of outdated now. And so there could be an experience that you have that really illuminates a structure that you have mentally or within your environment that is reinforcing this pattern. And so physically, this can be a very disjointed experience because your chart ruler of Saturn is involved, meaning this acts as a heavy personal maturation moment for you. And so you could feel a sensation of almost this mental viscosity, like your thoughts are moving through mud or becoming foggy before they can actually be processed. However, there is a massive contradiction here because the zap or the electricity and the caffeine that we talked about in the earlier part of the video will be coming from Mars and the eclipse happening right in your first house of self. And so you physically and energetically are likely vibrating at this time. You could feel wired, reactive, and ready to sprint, but your ability to communicate that energy could hit a wall in the third house. And so it can feel specifically like screaming underwater, if that makes sense. And so you could have a massive urge to assert yourself or to launch a new version of you, but the words could fail you, or maybe you find yourself feeling misunderstood, really forcing you to stop talking and just start really thinking about what you are trying to say. And so in the real world, this energy can show up as a communication crisis or a re-education. And so one potential scenario is the writer's block that really turns into a masterpiece. So you could be trying to write a book, a thesis, or even just an important email or a text message, but the words won't really come to you. And so the fog blocks that easy flow, really forcing you to structure your thoughts with painful precision, especially with what is being illuminated at this time. And then you could be faced with the realization of what is blocking you, really forcing you to restructure a new way of processing your communications. But another example is a serious situation with your immediate environment. Maybe you realize something about your commute, your communications with your immediate environment, or the things that you interact with are really shaping your mindset negatively, and you could feel an urge to shift that dynamic entirely. And a third example is literally about transportation as well, because your third house can rule your commute. And so you could, for example, deal with a confusing car trouble or commute that becomes a nightmare, really understanding the gravity at this time, forcing you to change your daily route in some way. And this can act as the universe forcing you to pay attention to the how of your movement. And you are learning that you likely can't just autopilot your way through the day anymore, but the changes you need to make could end up making things so much better, way more better than you imagined. But the warning of this transit is very specific. Watch your mouth, watch your mind, and watch the road. Because with Saturn and Neptune in the third house, there is this danger of miscommunication that could have long-term consequences. And you could say something that you think is clear, but maybe Neptune kind of scrambles the signal and Saturn could make the fallout very heavy. And there is also a mental health warning with this transit because anxiety spirals can be intense here because your mind is trying to process this fog with a wired nervous system. And so also avoid driving your car aggressively to blow off steam because the third house could point to commuting accidents. So be mindful. This does not mean you're going to get into an accident. I just want to say that. But if you do drive and you're mindful, you will probably be okay. But the opportunity here is mental mastery. And so you really have the chance now to start rewiring your neural pathways at this time. And if you can slow down your speech and discipline your mind, you can become a voice of authority in your own life. You have the potential to teach, to write, or to speak in a way that is incredibly powerful because it is stripped of all the fluff, Or you could tweak a mental habit that completely alters your perception of reality, which is insane in my opinion. And this is where the mental faults of your life could be exposed. But this gives you a chance to rewire your mind, which can completely alter your reality as your mindset frames so much of how you perceive the world and your life. For you Pisces rising, this Saturn-Neptune conjunction hits the sector of your chart that deals with the tangible realities of your life, the second house. And so this is the house of money, possessions, your physical voice, your skills, and your self-worth. And so this waking up in the matrix moment here is likely a sobering realization that could be triggered about what you own, what you earn, and what you actually value. And so physically, this can feel like a fluctuation in your sense of gravity, as gravity is kind of what keeps us stable. And the second house is where we stand firm. And with Neptune dissolving the ground and Saturn trying to pave a new one, you could feel financially insecure, but also physically under-earthed in some way, like you can't quite get a grip on your resources. And you can now see the faults in maybe why that is. However, the real tension or the caffeine in your system could come from Mars in the eclipse happening in the 12th house of the subconscious, dreams, and hidden enemies. And this is a very specific, difficult combination that could end up being gold because the zap is happening in the dark. And so you could be dealing with intense insomnia, maybe an overwhelming amount of downloads, maybe a little bit of anxiety or anxious dreams, or hidden self-sabotaging patterns that could impact your bank account or your confidence. Or you could simply realize what about your subconscious is limiting you from this worth. And it could feel like lying awake at 3 a.m., really panic calculating your budget or weighing your worth or your skills and realizing why you do this. And so in the real world, this energy is likely financial or value-based. So one potential scenario is maybe there's a dissolving income stream. So maybe you could have relied on a source of income that felt secure, but then Neptune reveals it's unstable or it just simply fades away, really forcing Saturn to step in and demand you build a new rock-solid revenue stream. And so you are potentially learning the discipline of wealth building without the delusion of easy money to ensure that what you pursue is grounded in reality. But another example is maybe there's a crisis of confidence because Mars in the 12th house could be whispering negative self-talk from the shadows, telling you that you aren't good enough. You could also have some dreams suggesting this too. I have insane dreams when Mars transits my 12th house, while Saturn in the second could demand that you ask for a raise or to set a higher rate or a higher standard for yourself. And so you have to prove your worth to the world while fighting a war for your worth internally. And this could lead to you coming to a realization on what this battle will require, either internally or externally. But a third example involves your literal physical possessions. Maybe you find yourself purging or losing material items that you think used to define you. And you could realize that the stuff were just props. And you now are looking for a sense of security that cannot be bought or lost or stolen under any circumstances, even if life gets crazy. And your relationship with the material world could just be completely rewritten. And so the warning during this transit is very critical. Watch your wallet, watch your self-confidence, and check for leaks, because with Neptune in the second, you could have some financial ambiguity at this time, really forgetting to cancel subscriptions, maybe being too generous with loans, or falling for get-rich-quick schemes. But you are also prone to not realizing the gravity of your own talents and worth, which could lead you down incorrect paths. The danger also could involve driving your metaphorical car with a hole in the gas tank, really wondering why you can never get to the destination or why you're always drained, because even if one structure becomes unveiled in your life, the danger for a new and incorrect one still looms. But the opportunity is to really build so much spiritual self-sufficiency and to realize the steps needed to take on this new income pursuit or your new talents. And so Saturn is really teaching you how to resource yourself. And by the end of this transit, you could know exactly what you're worth. And you could have built maybe this financial or material structure, or at least a plan that actually reflects your value. And you can learn that true abundance is rarely about having an overflowing cup, and that it is more about having a cup that is solid, leak-proof, and yours. And it may take time to realize this value that you have, but once you do, it cannot ever be taken away from you. Or it could be a time to completely redefine how value is obtained so that you can build it in a new and completely healthy way that could completely change your life. Aries Mars, your Mars really functions as a high performance self starter. And so you have a natural urge to take initiative. And even if you're struggling to take initiative, you at the very least prefer to face obstacles head on. And so your fuel source is autonomy and direct motion. And you can generate energy when you can see a clear line between your action and a result. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries kind of acts like a resistance band training for this engine. And it's not that you stop moving, but Saturn kind of applies a little bit of a drag to your natural speed, while Neptune could soften the target a little bit. And this kind of creates this unique dynamic because your engine is ready to go, but the gears will be shifting a little bit slower, or you may not know where exactly you're going, and you're being asked to master control of where you direct your energy. And so your energy really is being compressed, which can actually build more power over time if you don't try to release it all at once. It's about learning how to direct your fiery energy, if that makes sense. And so physically, this could feel like a surplus of energy in your muscles, or like you are perpetually warmed up for a sprint, and you might notice a little bit of heat or tension in your head simply because your body is primed and ready to go, but it doesn't know where to go. And it's kind of that feeling of sitting in a car at a red light that lasts a little bit too long. You really are ready to go, but at this point, it's about, waiting for the proper outlet to channel your energy so that you don't burn out due to a lost cause. And so to manage this energy and make the most of this transit, you can engage in micro expressions of force. And since big long-term actions could develop a little bit slowly at this time, your body could do good discharging adrenaline in short, high intensity bursts. And so this could be physical, like high intensity interval training, maybe like shaking your body to release a little bit of that energy, or maybe even engaging in a non-physical hobby that requires quick bursts of focus that can help you use your fuel naturally and learn how to direct your energy. And so you are manually flushing the cortisol from your daily system so that you can stay cool, calm, and ready to tackle life. And the thing to watch out for with this transit is just a feeling of wanting to go 0 to 60 before the road is actually paved. And so you might feel tempted to manufacture urgency just to feel a rush, but you don't need to. And so the potential here is really the cultivation or the creation of self-sustaining potency. And you can learn really how to keep your fuel tank super, super full without needing a constant external wind to really, give you that drive. And you can find that drive within yourself, which is such a beautiful thing that you can discover at this time. And you can discover a fuel source that is based on internal combustion, really driving your own power from your own presence or your own drive or your own, management of your energy rather than just the speed of your results. And that can help you live the best life possible if you know how to cultivate this energy properly. Taurus Mars, your Mars really exerts energy through steady, methodical processes that prioritize stability in your life. And your fuel source is sensory satisfaction and the guarantee of security. And so you generate the will to move when you feel physically safe, or you can see or taste or touch a tangible reward. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries could introduce a little bit of a different tempo. And so the fog of Neptune kind of makes the outcome a little harder to see clearly right away, which kind of goes a little bit against your Taurus nature, while the Aries Saturn influence will ask for a little bit more adaptability. This doesn't mean that you stop though, it just means that your drive will shift into conservation mode because your body is so smart, it really wants to make sure that the path in front of you is solid before expending precious calories. So you could feel a little bit more deliberate than normal, or you feel like you need to be more deliberate. And so physically, this transit could register as a sense of being very anchored or heavy, as if gravity has dialed up just a notch to keep you in place. And it can feel as if you are physically bracing against the world to hold your ground. And it's like moving through water while everybody else is running on land. And so the somatic response could be a stubborn refusal to be rushed, sometimes manifesting as a little bit of stiffness as you maintain your stability against the current that is, this crazy life we're living. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, I would focus on tactile grounding at this time to keep your engine humming. And since the future is a little bit unknown or uncertain, I would try to refuel by focusing entirely on the immediate physical present in front of you. Maybe try to engage in resistance training, heavy lifting, or slow, heavy yard work, if that makes sense. But this will serve a dual purpose. It uses your strengths and it also reminds you and your body of its physical boundaries. It kind of grounds you in the present, if that makes sense. But if you don't want to work out, because not everybody wants to do that, you can try eating distinct or crunchy or temperature specific foods, something with an interesting texture to really ground your senses. And you are proving to your nervous system at this time that it is safe. And you do this by engaging with matter, and this can refuel you, and it can also help you to expend your energy better. You can build something, you can cook, and so your body can feel the return of investment of what you're doing instantly, and it can help you feel safe and grounded. And so the thing to watch out for is becoming a little bit too hesitant to move because you're waiting for a guarantee in life. And so you might feel like waiting until everything is perfect, but sometimes good enough is fine. But the potential of this transit is really the development of foundational endurance, and you are learning to derive fuel from the process of building rather than just the final result or the final object. And you really have the chance to become the anchor that can hold steady at this time, really discovering that your ability to endure the slow grind and to find, energy from that and to expend it properly, to really better your life is actually your most valuable resource that can take you so far in whatever it is that you want to pursue. Gemini Mars. Your Mars really exerts energy through mental activity, verbal connection, and multitasking, and your fuel source is curiosity, data, and the cross-pollination of ideas. You love to kind of, bounce around and really, you have this natural curiosity for life, and you are energized by connecting the dots. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction really creates like a lot of background noise for this source. And so Aries demands action, but Neptune softens the data that you use to make decisions, and this could cause your drive to go into brainstorming mode, and so you could feel a buzzing urge to really figure things out in your life, but the details are fluid right now, and so your willpower doesn't go away. It's kind of scanning for a signal, which can lead to a feeling of buffering or trying to process a lot of information at once, which can overwhelm you if you're not careful. And so physically, it can feel like having too many browser tabs open, maybe this mental busyness that translates into twitching or drumming your fingers, or an inability to sit still does take place, and you could feel a bit of pressure in your throat or your vocal cords, really representing the urge to communicate that is looking for the right words, and you don't really know how to do that. And so the body could also feel electrically charged, really leading to a feeling of being wired where your mind wants to keep going even if your body is ready to rest. And so it is about listening to your body cues at this time so that you can direct your energy properly. And so to really handle this energy as good as you can and to make the most of this transit, you have to shift how you exert your energy from solving to documenting or, investigating. And so calibrate your energy into observation. And since you can't really organize the confusion at this time through brute force, maybe writing or learning about a niche topic or speaking into a voice recorder can really help discharge the mental static. You just need to let it out within an outlet that can help you, process things fluidly, because you are a mutable sign. But also breath work is also very helpful to move energy from your upper chest down to, your lungs, your diaphragm. And so when the urge to act kind of feels a little bit all over the place, you can focus also on doing things with your hands if that can help you, get that nervous energy out. And so maybe try drawing or knitting or fixing like something small, or even just tapping your fingers to really give that nervous energy a physical outlet, and so you don't really pent that up, if that makes sense. And you can refuel by becoming curious about the chaos rather than trying to fix it, and that curiosity can really drive you so far, and you can calibrate yourself to operate off of that. And so the thing to watch out for is just spreading yourself too thin, really trying to chase down information that isn't ready to be found yet, and there is a possibility of getting stuck in the what ifs at this time, so just simplify where possible. But the potential for this transit is the attainment of this ability to navigate in a very nuanced way. And you can really upgrade your fuel tank to, really fuel off of facts, but also, fuel off of intuition. And you are emerging as somebody who can operate fluently in gray areas if you use this energy correctly and really derive energy from the complexity of the puzzle itself rather than the need for a simple answer. And if you are able to really, embrace this energy, this can fuel your tank, not just now, but, for the next foreseeable future. Cancer Mars, your Mars really exerts energy based on emotional resonance and protective instinct, and your fuel source is the feeling of safety or the need to nurture and passion as well. And so you act when you feel moved or when something you love needs care. You really need to feel this motivation to care for something if you are going to feel motivation at all. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction can kind of act like a little bit of a weather storm kind of happening around your shell. And so the pressure of Saturn combined with the ambiguity of Neptune can really trigger the somatic need to rest. And your drive might not look like outward action right now, although it could if you feel super, super passionate, but it could also be this intense, valuable inward maintenance. And so if the vibe feels a little bit off, you could naturally prioritize protection and comfort at whatever cost that is. And this can be used as a strength, not a weakness. It's about learning how to direct your energy. And so physically, there could be a feeling of fullness or sensitivity in your chest as if you are holding your breath or just feeling very deeply at this time, and your energy levels could flow with your mood. So you could feel a bit more sensitive to harsh interactions or vague pressure at this time, but your body could also hold on to water in a literal sense or weight, kind of as a form of padding or comfort. So you could bloat if you're especially stressed. And so be gentle with these fluctuations. They're normal. And so to really handle this energy and make the most of this transit, you have to respect the ebb phase of your energy. If you think about the ebb and the flow, if you've ever heard that phrase, you were at the ebb phase or you could be at the ebb phase, and you have to respect it. And so going with the urge to retreat could actually recharge you. And so water could be a great regulator for you. A lot of Cancer placements I know actually do good with water. It's not just a stereotype. So maybe hot baths or swimming can really equalize the pressure inside and outside of your body, which could help refuel you. But also establishing a safe zone in your life where the noise of the outside world can't enter is also potentially a good idea to really protect your peace and help you to recharge. And so when you do need to act, because you probably will need to act, you can frame whatever action you're doing as an act of protection, aka I am doing this to protect my peace, rather than aggression. And you can operate best when you are defending a perimeter. And so visualize your actions as really strengthening your barriers. And so the thing to watch out for during this transit is holding on to emotions until they feel too heavy and then they kind of pull you down. And because your fuel is linked to safety, you could absorb the environment. And so make sure that you are clearing that out as much as possible to help you recharge. And you don't want to hold on to energy until it turns into moodiness, trust me. And so the potential for this transit is really learning how to cultivate this deeply driven power, because you are upgrading your fuel tank from relying on external safety to really learning how to derive safety internally. You can build your own fuel tank at this time, and you can learn to derive energy from the act of creating safety rather than the results of just finding it. And you can build an emotional shell at this time that is resilient and capable of handling any weather. And this not only can help you during this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but it can help you in the near foreseeable future and really help you move forward with your life, because now you know how to exert your energy. Leo Mars, your Mars really exerts energy through authentic self-expression, maybe sometimes creative risks, but also acts of bravery. And so your fuel source is radiance, or the warmth that comes from either being seen or appreciated, or at the very least to knowing your actions have an impact, because not all Leo Mars placements want to be in that limelight. They just want to know that their actions have an impact. And so you generate the will to move when you feel like your actions will allow you to shine or to show your authentic self. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction kind of acts like an intimate setting or a private screening for your personal stage. And so Saturn could focus the outlet for your expression, and Neptune kind of softens the audience, or at the very least the feedback when it comes to seeing the results of your actions. And so this can create a shift in liveliness. And so your engine is still running, but the external reflection that you usually rely on that helps you see if you're on the right path or not could be a little bit quieter. And so you might put out effort and receive a subtle response rather than a loud one, asking you to find value in the act that you're doing itself. And so physically, there could be a sensation of cooling or settling in the chest, which is a shift from your usual, solar, heartfelt vitality to something a little bit more steady. And your posture is something to also pay attention to. So the somatic urge might be to relax a little bit. So keeping your back backbone strong will help you to feel confident at this time. And you could feel a bit tired if you try to project your energy too hard outward rather than keeping it contained and warm within, because it could just be you expending your energy towards something that won't really recharge you back, which could lead you to feeling drained. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, I would convert your fuel source from solar, which is external validation, to more nuclear, which is internal generation. So engage in physical movement that really strengthens your body, whether rows, pull-ups, or maybe spine lengthening yoga, to really hone in the feeling of having your own back and standing strong in who you are no matter what. And if you engage in anything creative, do it strictly for your own pleasure, as if you're creating a masterpiece just for yourself. And this kind of retrains your Mars to function on the joy of the act itself, which can really help you to contain your energy levels and to exercise them properly, because you need to treat your energy as a treasure and spend it only when it matters to you. So the thing to watch out for is just feeling a little bit less confident because the applause or the results seem quiet, and you don't want to think that your light has gone out just because the room feels a little bit different. But the opportunity or potential during this transit is the discovery of authentic drive. And so you really have the chance to disconnect your fuel line from the opinion of the world and plug it directly into your heart. And you are learning to generate energy by yourself simply because it is your nature to create. And you can really become a lighthouse that shines regardless of who is watching, which can not only help you generate and conserve your energy now, but it could help you really expend your energy properly beyond just this transit, which could really motivate you to really act on behalf of your own life for years to come. Virgo Mars. Your Mars exerts energy through meticulous planning, precision, and service, and your fuel source is efficiency and the satisfaction of fixing or optimizing a system. So you are energized when you see details falling into place. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction represents a sort of entropy or haziness. It is chaotic, unsound, and vague, which is basically the opposite of your fuel source. And this doesn't destroy your motivation, but it does dampen it a little bit because you cannot easily optimize this chaos, and your drive could turn into a frantic, high-speed anxiety where you feel like you're trying to sweep the flood almost with a broom. And so the lack of a clear plan can leave you feeling stalled, as if your brain is spinning, really trying to figure out a correct step that doesn't seem to exist right now. And so physically, your body could feel wired or tense or twitchy, as if your muscles are constantly micro-adjusting to a shifting floor. And there could be a sensation of restlessness or discomfort in your own skin simply because the environment feels disorderly, and you could find yourself holding your breath kind of while performing your tasks, really subconsciously waiting for an error to occur. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, shrink your world to the micro level where possible, because you can't fix macro problems at this time. And so find fuel in fixing small approachable things. Maybe try organizing a single drawer, or perfecting a small craft, or following a simple physical routine that provides order for your Mars sign or restarts that dopamine loop. But also somatic practices involving rhythm and details such as knitting or counting steps could soothe your nervous system. And accept that functional is the new perfect, and that keeping the engine running is more important than tuning it into peak performance. And so the warning is the risk of spinning your wheels. And so you could drive yourself into overworking or overthinking by trying to analyze a situation that defies logic, really wasting your fuel on fixing things that are currently in flux. However, the potential is really the attainment of adaptable mastery, your mutable sign. Always remember that. And so you can learn to derive a fuel source from being selective with your energy, truly selective with where you apply your energy, identifying the one thing that matters in the mess and ignoring the rest. And so you do have the opportunity to upgrade your engine to run on imperfect data, really finding satisfaction and energy and keeping your corner of the world running smoothly. Libra Mars. Your Mars exerts energy through evaluation, strategy, and collaboration, and your fuel source is balance, fairness, but also social reciprocity. And you often need a counterweight, whether it's a partner, an opponent, or a frame of reference to really activate your drive. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is an isolating, foggy energy that could blur the line between friend and foe, but it could also blur the boundaries of where your fuel sources are derived. And you could feel like you are playing tennis tennis, but the opponent or the counterbalance has disappeared, and so you're kind of playing by yourself. And so your drive could hesitate because you cannot assess the impact of your actions on others, really leading to a pause in decision making. And the fuel line could feel pinched when you cannot calibrate your actions against an external standard. And so physically, you could feel a persistent heavy fatigue that comes from the mental caloric burn of weighing options that really constantly change. And you could feel like your system is overwhelmed and needs to power down or rest more just to maintain a baseline function. And so I would pay attention to whether you feel a bit dizzy or off balance physically as your body tries to find its center at this time. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, it is crucial that you become your own fuel source. And so since you cannot rely on external feedback, physical exercises that really focus on core stability and balance could really help you to find your inner center at this time. And I'm actually currently with a Libra Mars, and this advice came from him, and he says it really helps him to channel physical activity in a very balanced way to really help him get out of his head. But also I would try to treat your own code of ethics as the motivating factor, similar to how you would for another person. And so when you feel stuck, I would try to force a small low stakes decision just to remind your body that it can move without perfect information. And this ensures that when you do act, you do have the momentum. The warning of this transit is the risk of calibration fatigue, really exhausting your reserves, trying to understand your behavior to match a social environment that is currently formless. And so you could waste energy trying to balance a scale that really has no structure. But the potential of this transit is the attainment of strategic equilibrium. And so you have the opportunity to upgrade your fuel source from really relying on external reciprocity to more internal alignment. And you can learn to derive energy from the act of holding your own center, balancing yourself, proving that your capacity for justice is a generated power, not something that's reactive, which could really help fuel you for years to come, since you know now how to properly motivate yourself. Scorpio Mars, your Mars really exerts energy through deep strategic pushes and the long game. And so your fuel source is intensity, hidden truth, and power derived from transformation. And you are able to generate will when you are getting to the bottom of something or solving a mystery, or at the very least obtaining a result that makes you feel powerful. And so you are comfortable with Neptune's water, but Saturn's pressure can feel like a lot for you at this time. And your drive is fueled by the need to control or understand, but this transit could create a bottomless pit or an immovable wall. And so you could feel a compulsive urge to act on suspicion or a need for change, but be blocked by a lack of evidence or a lack of clear direction. And so this can act as a plug in your exhaust pipe, really turning that drive inward into a pressurized state. And you kind of feel like a soda that's been shaken too much and ready to explode. And so physically at this time, your survival instincts and your fight or flight drive could be dialed up to a maximum, really creating a state of hypervigilance where your deep muscles are kind of coiled. So pay attention to any time you do feel triggered by fight or flight, even when things are safe. But you could also experience a throbbing or low level ache in your lower abdomen or pelvic floor, which is kind of like the physical manifestation of unexpressed power and holding on. And this is a sign that your energy either needs a refuel or it needs a target. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, you really need catharsis. So passive rest will likely just make you feel more trapped, even if you are feeling low energy. I'm a Scorpio Mars myself, and this is what I'm slowly learning as well. When I go to the gym, even if I'm tired, I kind of feel better, but also move the energy through intensity that mimics a survival situation, maybe lifting heavy, doing intense cardio, or primal release techniques like screaming into a pillow. And you can also fuel your Mars by investigating inner mysteries. You don't gotta do workouts, so maybe try to dig deep into complex subjects like psychology or research. And this can give your drive a direction that Saturn cannot block. And so you need to hunt for an answer, even if the answer is internal, to really burn off this fuel and properly recharge yourself. And so the warning for this transit is the risk of pressure buildup. And because your fuel is high powered, if it isn't burned off, it could turn into obsession, suspicion, or inflammation if you turn it inward. And as somebody with Mars and Scorpio myself. I know the danger of wasting fuel, really fighting battles against shadows. However, the opportunity is the mastery. Something I like to call regenerative alchemy. You can alchemize your life and really fuel yourself up that way, because you do have the chance to cook that fuel down into something more powerful, make it more efficient, and you can learn to derive power from endurance itself, really transforming pressure into a diamond hard sense of resilience. Sagittarius Mars. Your Mars really exerts energy through exploration, expansion, and the pursuit of meaning. And your fuel source is faith, the horizon, and the belief that you are moving towards something bigger. You really need to feel inspired before you act. And so you generate energy when you feel free. And the Saturn Neptune conjunction kind of acts like this cage made of fog. And so your drive is linked to freedom of movement. And this transit could feel like it's restricting that. And you may feel your fuel is draining because you cannot see the future. And if the horizon is obscured and the path is blocked, your engine could struggle. And you don't just lose the ability to move, you could lose the belief that the movement will actually lead to something, bigger or important. And so physically, there could be a feeling of claustrophobia within your body, or sensation of walls closing in, which could manifest as a shortness of breath or just feeling boxed in. But also your energy levels could drop into lethargy where you feel stunted, or you could feel a physical itch in your legs to really bolt or to run or to leave, even if your feet feel like they are tied down by weights. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, you have to remember, if you cannot move horizontally, try moving vertically. And what I mean by that is explore and exert within the scope of what you have access to. So you could try hiking, climbing, or walking in nature, which really satisfies that somatic urge to move against resistance. But also you can refuel your drive by shifting your target from outer success to really inner wisdom. So learning a new philosophy or a difficult skill can give you the sensation of expansion, even if you are stuck in one place. And so find a mission within the restriction, really viewing whatever obstacles you face not as like a stop sign or a stoplight, but as kind of like this training ground where you can really get ready for the next step in your life. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of restless wandering or reckless redirections of your energy and attempts to try to do the right thing. And so you could burn through fuel, taking risks that lead to nowhere, or bolt from responsibilities just to really feel, free or independent. And there is a danger of drifting into a cynical mindset because the great adventure seems canceled. But the opportunity is really the creation or cultivation of this internal sense of faith. And so you could learn to generate momentum from the belief in the future, even when you cannot see it yet. And you can become the keeper of the flame, really knowing how to fuel your engine in directions that truly expand your horizons from the inside out. Capricorn Mars. Your Mars exerts energy really through discipline, goal-oriented labor, and your fuel source is achievement, even if it's just achievement of a smaller goal. And the evidence of building something that lasts really does also fuel you. And you are energized by the respect that comes with mastery. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction could feel like a direct hit because Saturn is your ruler. And so it can feel like the laws of physics are glitching while you are trying to build a bridge and the bridge isn't working even though it's right there, And so you are willing to do the work, but the fog means that results aren't guaranteed. And so your drive can suffer from structural fatigue or the exhaustion of holding up a building that kind of feels like it's shifting or sinking, and it takes a lot of strength, And you may feel a crisis of will, really asking, why work this hard if the system is broken and it's going to lead to nothing? And so physically, the sensation is one of dryness or heaviness, as if your bones are carrying too much weight. So you could feel very tense, very sore, or weighed down by the pressure of the world. But you could also feel a chronic deep set fatigue born from, the psychic burden of responsibility that you were carrying for others or for a failing system. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, it really is time to learn how to treat maintenance as a requirement. And I've talked to a lot of Capricorn placements who struggle with this. I know you're like, I can't do that. But I try to think of it like this. I'm a Virgo Mercury. Maybe this will help. Let's say right now you can exert one task per hour, but then you rest one day and now you can exert 2 tasks an hour. It's just more efficient. Look at it from a math standpoint if you have to, because your body really really needs structural support. It really needs chiropractic care or maybe a massage or stretching. You just really need to take care of your body and spend time on it to really counteract rigidity, but also try to redefine success as integrity. And that comes with how you treat yourself and your energy reserves as well. And so even if the external structure that you're trying to build feels like it's crumbling, the fact that you did your part with excellence must become the thing that fuels you in the future. So focus on the endurance of the effort rather than the glory of the result. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of wear and tear, really driving yourself into burnout by trying to outwork the Neptune fog. And there is a possibility that your fuel shortage could manifest as being cold or rigid, really treating yourself and others as machines and really burning yourself or the system or whatever you're working on out. However, the potential is the attainment of this sense of internal mastery. You could be so strong internally, and this is your time to prove it because you have the opportunity to learn to derive energy from the act of doing a thing well, regardless of the outcome. And you can really become a pillar of reality, really fueled by a quiet knowledge that you are the one thing in the chaos that will not break. Aquarius Mars, your Mars really exerts energy through innovation, rebellion, and maybe group mind connection. You're very wired, and your fuel source is freedom, sudden insight, and the electricity of working towards a cause. And so you generate will when you feel inspiration or identify a way to disrupt a stagnant system. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction kind of acts as a jamming signal. So the collective atmosphere could feel heavy and confused, really disrupting the high frequency signals you rely on. And your drive operates in bursts, but this transit can make those surges feel a little bit erratic, and you could feel a desperate desire to rebel, but Saturn could restrict the exit, and your fuel creates back pressure because the system you want to hack may be unresponsive, and so physically there could be a deep sensation of disassociation, maybe feeling like you are floating slightly above your body because physical reality feels too dense, and you could experience circulation issues, maybe your extremities are cold, or a feeling of vibrating internal tension. Even when lying still, you could feel like you're buzzing essentially, but that you don't know how and what to do about it. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, you need grounding to handle the excess static. And you guys can have such charged energy, but it is important to not let it be charged in the wrong ways so that you can apply this energy in the right ways when it does matter. And so physically touch the ground, walk barefoot, or use weighted blankets to really bring down this energy. And your fuel can return when you don't allow your energy to leak and to ambiguous causes. And so focus on what you can control, experimenting with new ways of doing things in your immediate life, and collaborating with maybe small, trusted people in your life can help you distribute the electrical load, really preventing you from overloading yourself. And so the warning of this transit is systemic overload or deep detachment, and you could find yourself cutting cords abruptly just to stop the noise, really entering a state of cynical isolation. And there is also a danger of rebellious outbursts that really have no strategic value, but the opportunity is the creation of this visionary frequency that can help charge you, and you have the chance to upgrade your fuel source from being reactionary to being truly inspired. And you can learn to read the patterns within the noise, really driving energy from the mission statement that you set for yourself, really independent of anything else, which can carry you so far in life. Pisces Mars, your Mars exerts energy through flow, intuition, and emotional connection, even if it's, with an outside source. And your fuel source is really inspiration, compassion, or the feeling of being moved by something. And you act when you feel it's like this spiritual or energetic imperative. And so with Neptune, your modern ruler involved, this is familiar territory, but Saturn really adds a heaviness that could make you feel like you are swimming in heavy water. And your drive could be permeable. If the collective vibe is fearful, you will absorb that, and you may feel like a martyr, really expending energy to help others who are stuck, or at least taking on that energy when you don't have to, leaving you drained because the cause never resolves. And so physically, your boundaries may feel leaky, where you physically feel the stress of people around you. And this could bring you even more overwhelmed than usual if this energy is let into your system. And this leads to a waterlogged sensation in the limbs, as if even walking will require twice the effort. And you could just feel incredibly drained from a physical standpoint rather than a mental one. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, prioritize the flow state in whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's a tough task. And so rigid, disciplined exercise at this time could drain you, for example. You need movement that's fluid and maybe mimics water, like swimming or dance or whatever resonates with you. And sleep can also be such a good fuel source. And this doesn't just mean, sleeping a certain number of hours. The quality of your sleep will matter so much. Just one example, having a good pillow is so important because I bought a $100 pillow that changed my life, and it really does make a difference. You don't need the money, but at the very least, make sure your pillow's set up and everything really, supports your body. Or maybe just have a white noise machine or some white noise playing that can help. Do not deny your need for quality rest, as this is when your subconscious really filters data. But also practice psychic hygiene by visualizing a barrier between you and the chaos around you, and act only when your intuition gives you a clear green light, and surrender the need to control the outcome. And so the risk of this transit is really energetic overwhelm or escapism, really dissolving your drive into stagnation because the Saturnian reality feels too heavy. And there is a possibility of compassion fatigue, really pouring fuel into pursuits that have holes in them. However, the potential is really mastering your fluid warrior archetype, and you have the opportunity to upgrade your fuel source from one of emotional reactivity to divine alignment. And you can learn to move with the current rather than fighting it, really deriving motivation from the act of surrender itself and navigating chaotic waters without getting overwhelmed. And you can take this fuel source for years to come, and it can really help you get anything done no matter how tough it is. With Mars in the first house, your fuel source is your autonomy, self-definition, and your physical vitality. And so your very existence is the primary cause for action. And you generate energy when you feel like you can be the captain of your own ship, really initiating movement simply because you have the feeling or the drive to do so. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries could feel a little bit like a pressure cooker around your identity. And so your fuel really relies on the statement, I am, but this transit could blur the mirrors you usually use to define yourself, and you are driven to assert yourself and your energy very potently, yet the external world could feel a little bit like smoke, really absorbing your impact without always giving you the resistance or feedback that you're used to. And so it could feel draining when you don't feel the weight of your own actions, actually resulting in something, potentially leading to a weird sensation where your engine spins without traction. And so physically, this tension could just be felt very, very directly, as first house placements tend to be felt very potently. And so it could feel like a constant buzzing, like you've had 3 coffees but haven't moved a muscle, or like you've had coffees but you haven't slept in a day, so it doesn't really do much, but you feel a little wired. And so you might get a sudden tension headache, or maybe you feel like your face is flushing. When you get frustrated, you feel anger very, very potently. And it's that feeling of revving a car engine while it's still in park. It's like a vibration under your skin that could make you feel restless. And so I would watch out for that feeling of needing to sprint, but feeling like you're moving in slow motion, or like there is a heavy weight pressing against your skin. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, treating your physical body as your primary project is absolutely essential. And your fuel can recharge when you engage in physical challenges that really define your boundaries. So maybe solo sports, endurance training, or any activity where you pit yourself against gravity. And so feeling your own physical edges really proves to your nervous system that you still exist, even if the Neptunian, energy is a little bit confusing. And so to keep the tank from draining, your drive does have to become a little bit self-sustaining. And aside from physical activity, which not everybody will want to do, you can refuel by asserting your existence in small, tangible ways, maybe changing your look or setting a physical boundary, but also just doing anything that brings you joy and invigorates you, which will be very individual depending on who you are. And so the warning for this transit is is the potential for burnout or clumsiness if you try to force things too hard. And so suppressed frustration could leak out as reckless movement, or like you're trying to smash through an obstacle that isn't actually there. But the potential of this transit is the rebirth of yourself and your energy, and you have the opportunity to really strip away false layers of your personality and discover a core of unshakable strength. And so emerging from this transit, you can really possess a redefined sense of self that operates independently of external circumstances, really understanding your strengths more than ever before. With Mars in the second house, your fuel source is substance, sustainability, and the sensory experience of having. And so you are driven by the tangible or fueled by the tangible. So maybe you build resources, securing assets, or proving your competence could really fuel you, but it could also be what you tend to act towards. And so you can generate energy when you see a direct measurable return of your investment. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction could create this phantom texture for you. So you are driven to really build security, yet maybe the materials available could feel like they're dissolving or restricted. And so your fuel source really gets threatened by the fear of scarcity or just confusion about what is actually valuable. And so the question, is this worth my effort, could become a riddle that stops you cold if you let it. And so physically, this tension could settle in your throat or your neck, and you might notice that your shoulders are constantly kind of hiking up by your ears, or maybe your jaw is very clenched, like you're holding onto something for dear life. And it can feel like a tightness in your vocal cords as well, making it hard to speak up sometimes, but also your body could actually feel heavy and lethargic, really refusing to move because it feels like it costs too much energy. So I would pay attention to if you feel stuck or stubborn physically, or if you feel very tight in your body. And so to really handle this energy and make the most of this transit, I would try shifting your definition of resource from external to more, internal, kind of like skills and values. And your fuel can recharge when you practice self-sufficiency, maybe engaging in activities that involve, the material world, such as cooking, gardening, woodworking, sculpting, even just touching grass. This really reminds your body that you are the generator of value, no matter what that value is. But also, if worry or scarcity hits, maybe try, refining your skills to really help you gain footing. Really focus on a tangible skill that you think will make you feel secure, or that you can use in the world to help you feel secure. And so reminding yourself of what you can actually do can restore your energy, actually. You think it might make you spend energy, but it actually helps restore it as well. And it helps you to get ready to tackle the world, no matter what the world is doing and how crazy it is. And so the warning is the danger of stagnation. But you could also, find yourself hoarding, whether it's literal stuff or emotionally holding back. And you could also find yourself fighting battles over things that lack true significance, really leading to a lost direction and really draining your energy, so you can't really apply it to the things you want to. However, the potential of this transit is to get self-worth that will still be there no matter what happens in the world. And you get to derive a true understanding of the values that actually fuel your life. And you can also learn that your ability to thrive really comes from your own two hands and your own internal value system, really giving you a confidence that no economic shift can ever take away. With Mars in the third house, your fuel source is connection, information, and mental agility, and you are driven to articulate your reality. You like to connect the dots, and you can navigate your immediate environment, and that's kind of how you navigate things. You like to observe what's around you, and you also generate energy when you are learning or teaching or debating or actively engaging with your local community or your environment, or, with the information in front of you. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction introduces like this sort of signal jammer to your frequency. And so you are driven to understand and communicate, yet the information coming in could feel a little bit contradictory or even blocked. And so your fuel source could drain rapidly when you feel unheard, or you can't make sense of what is right in front of you. And you might feel a frantic urge to really clear the air, only to find yourself spinning in circles of silence or, overthinking. And so physically, this tension could be felt in your hands, your arms, your shoulders, and it can be a buzzing anxiety, kind of like your fingers are twitching. It's like this restless energy to really interact with your environment that you can't really let out, even if you type or text or fidget around and it's stuck there. And so you might also feel like you can't take a deep breath, or that your breath is very shallow. And it's that racing mind feeling where your body is tired, but your brain won't shut off, really potentially creating nervous exhaustion. And so to handle this energy and to make the most of this transit, it is a good time to prioritize mental hygiene, which can actually help you preserve your energy. And so your fuel really recharges when you step away from the noise and really focus on a specific difficult mental task. Maybe you want to learn a new skill, maybe you write in private, or you just solve a puzzle. Do what you got to do. And also using your hands to discharge the energy can help a lot too. Maybe like manual dexterity tasks like writing with an actual pen, not like texting, or maybe like fixing something or making a craft can really ground that mental electricity, but also maybe focus on your immediate environment, maybe your neighborhood, maybe your close contacts. And this allows you to regain agency as well, but also solving a small tangible problem right in front of you will help you clear the static and help you to recharge. You think it will maybe make you spend energy, but it actually recharges you as well. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of harsh words, whether it's negative self-talk or maybe to others. And the risk of system overload is so big as well if you don't allow yourself to filter the information. And it's kind of a feeling of shaking a soda bottle, but kind of in your mind. But the potential though is really learning how to wield the power of your mind with such precision. And by disciplining your thoughts and refusing to react to the noise, you can really cut through this crazy time with words that are precise and powerful. And you can really refine your mindset and find a fuel source from that. And you can achieve a mindset that is resilient enough to really handle any distraction that life can throw at you. And you can take this skill for years to come. With Mars in the 4th house, welcome to the club. Your fuel source is emotional security, maybe private territory, and the protection of roots, no matter how that looks. I know a lot of people, don't really have a close relationship with their family with Mars in the 4th house. I kind of relate to this. It's not even about that. It's just about, the drive to be secure. And so you tend to act from the gut, and your drive really engages when you are defending your perimeter or securing your foundation. And you can generate energy when you feel safe behind closed doors or when you feel safe in who you are, so you can extend your energy to the outside world. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction acts a little bit like a shift in, your foundations, and you are driven to establish a secure base, yet the ground beneath you could feel a little bit, shaky or permeable or restricted. And confusion could also really invade your sense of private safety, whether that is your physical home or your internal landscape, and your fuel could drain when you feel unhoused in your own life, or when the safe space you rely on becomes the source of pressure. And so physically, this tension may be felt straight in the stomach or the gut, and it can feel like a tight knot kind of in your solar plexus chakra that really clenches up when you try to relax, and you don't really feel like you can relax, and your nervous system's out of whack. And you could also feel bloated or just uncomfortable, but also you could just feel tired even after a full night's sleep, because your body might still be technically guarding, your safety while you rest. And this can make you feel drained if you don't know how to direct this energy. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, treat protection as an active mechanism that you work with in your life. And so your fuel can recharge when you actively work on the structure of your private life. And this can mean a literal home renovation, whether you're fixing something or decorating something, which gives your Mars a physical target. But it could also help to really dig into the past or your psyche, like with ancestry work, or psychologically digging deep into your core, really using that Neptune fog to access history while Saturn can help you to process it. But also you need to establish strict boundaries around your rest. This is absolute key, even if you don't want to do the other steps, because privacy will become a non-negotiable resource that will recharge you. And active withdrawal into a safe haven can allow your engine to cool down and reset. And if you train yourself to be okay with doing this and to actually let yourself relax when you do this, you can gain so much energy. And so the warning about this transit is the risk of domestic volatility or just burning out because you can't find peace at home. And the pressure you suppress to keep the peace could really rot the foundation of your being if you're not careful. But the potential is really constructing such this deep sense of security that can't break no matter what life throws at you. And you have the opportunity to resolve old patterns and build a foundation that is so waterproof. And you can emerge from this transit with this deep power that really provides an unshakable sense of belonging and safety, meaning you feel at home within yourself, regardless of where you physically are. And you now know how to refuel your body, not only when it comes to your private space, but for years to come when it comes to how you exert yourself in the world. With Mars in the fifth house, your fuel source is joy, creative risk, and the expression of your unique identity, no matter how that looks. And so you are driven to leave a mark or to play and to engage in acts of creation that serve as an extension of who you are. And so you generate energy when you feel like you can take a risk, or when you're falling in love, or when you're doing something that really brings you that childlike joy. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction can feel a little bit like this, dampening of your spark. And so you want to express yourself, yet the channel could feel blocked, or the inspiration could feel a little bit foggy or slippery. And so your fuel source could suffer from a lack of feedback. And so the play might feel like hard work, and the creative muse might be silent for a bit. So it feels like you're creating, but at what cost? Like, what are you even creating for? And so the drive can stall because the pleasure, which is the essential ignition for your energy levels in your engine, can feel like it's missing. And so physically, this tension could really center in your heart and your upper back, and it can feel like a heaviness in your chest, almost like a dull ache of heartbreak, even if you aren't sad. And it can also feel like your internal pilot light has been dimmed, really potentially leaving your body feeling a bit cold or lacking that usual zip. But it could also feel like this very restless energy where your energy wants to come out and you want to do something, but you feel stuck. And so I would watch out for these feelings at this time. But to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, and to really learn how to feel yourself, shift your approach from directionless play to really disciplined creation, no matter how that looks. And so your fuel actually recharges when you treat creativity and you treat expression as a necessary part of your well-being, rather than just something that you do and it takes a lot of energy. It actually refuels you more than you realize. And so show up to the canvas or the stage or the romance, or, do the thing that you love to do with commitment, even if the inspiration is hiding a little bit. But also try to engage in like this contained risk. Maybe try competitive sports or hobbies that really give your Mars an outlet, and you can refuel by finding the joy in the struggle of creation rather than the result. Let yourself have fun in the process. And so physical movement that really strengthens your spine can help you embody the feeling of standing tall in your pursuits, and it can make you feel loose in the sense that, your creativity or your childlike joy can come out because you're not so stiff. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of losing your spark or chasing extreme heights just to feel something, and you could be tempted to gamble with your energy in ways that actually drain you or collapse into boredom. But the potential, however, is the mastery of, the great work or the great sense of joy. And you are really learning to identify what actually brings you joy and what actually fuels you, because your Mars doesn't just, apply energy to this fifth house stuff. It is needed in every area of your life. And you can really grow, your energy levels by really moving beyond instant gratification to produce something in your life that has enduring value and that really, makes you feel alive and invigorated. And you can discover a mature form of joy that really is self-sustaining, invigorating you for years to come. But also it's a sense of joy that you can find no matter what the state of the world is. With Mars in the sixth house, your fuel source is efficiency, usefulness, and the optimization of the systems that rule your life. And so you may be driven to fix problems, organize chaos, or be of service through your competence. You are somebody who likes to, serve others probably. And you can generate energy when you are solving a puzzle or completing a routine or refining a process in your life to make it easier, when you're taking care of yourself and your body. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction could feel a little bit like a systematic failure. And so you may be driven to really improve your life, for example, and then you may feel, that something is unsolvable or your tools feel limited. So you can't really get your life together like you want to. And your fuel could drain rapidly when you cannot close the loop on whatever it is that you're doing or a task. And the presence of disorder that refuses to be ordered could create friction that overheats your engine if you don't know how to apply your energy. And so physically, this tension could feel like it is affecting your nervous system and your digestion. And so you could feel like a weird buzzing or a twitchiness, like your body's trying to process too much static, but you could also feel a little bit burned out, like you're working too hard and there's not a lot of results. And this could be exhausting if you don't know how to handle it. And it can feel like your body is working overtime to clean up something that won't really clean up, if that makes sense. So pay attention to burnout and flare-ups of feelings, as your body could be the main battlefield right now. But to handle this energy and to make the most of this transit, I would prioritize a protocol over a complete cure, and your fuel and your body can recharge when you focus on the process of the daily routine rather than the final outcome of it. And so engage in perfecting small daily rituals like making coffee or stretching or organizing one thing in your life, just to prove to your nervous system that order is possible. But also somatic tracking and biohacking can become major fuel sources. So use your body as almost this lab for experimentation. So if you face chronic issues, accepting that they must be managed rather than instantly solved is absolutely crucial if you want to, be able to use your routines to become a fuel source for your energy levels. But also detox practices can really help you move stagnant energy out. And so the warning of this transit involves the risk of focusing too much on health worries or workaholism, really driving yourself into the ground because you're trying to outrun a feeling of not being enough. And you don't want to deplete your energy on improper routines, but the potential of this transit is to learn to develop this sense of holistic mastery, and you can become an expert in integrating the body, mind, and spirit. And you can learn to build routines that are flexible enough to handle the chaos and strong enough to support health, really becoming a problem solver who can navigate any storm and actually deriving fuel from your day-to-day routine, which can carry you in so many areas of your life. With natal Mars in the 7th house, your fuel source is engagement, reciprocity, and the spark of contact with other people. And so you can generate energy through interaction or the presence of another, whether a partner, a competitor, a collaborator, a friend. And this can really activate your engine, even if you are introverted. And you can even derive inspiration from others to refuel your energy, even if you aren't directly in contact with them. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction can act a little bit like a distortion in the mirror you rely on. And so you are driven to engage, yet people might feel unavailable or elusive, and your fuel source could drain because the feedback loop feels a little bit interrupted. And so you could push against the world, really expecting a solid surface, but you could feel like it's a little bit transparent because your hand goes right through it. And so your drive could stall when either another refuses to enter the ring, or maybe when other people feel like they're challenging you a little bit too much, really leaving you feeling like you're without connection or energy, and this could really drain you. And so physically, you are likely to feel this in maybe your lower back and your hips, and you could also feel off balance or dizzy, kind of like your physical center of gravity is shifting. It's kind of strange, but you could feel fine alone at this time and then physically tense up or get a spike of adrenaline the second you walk into a room with another person. And so I would just pay attention to those shifts and really listen to what your body's telling you. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, really treat interaction as a solo martial art. And so your fuel will recharge when you maintain your own equilibrium regardless of other people's movements, but also try to establish energetic boundaries where you engage with others without merging with the chaos. Maybe try to visualize a glass wall between you and another person. This could work well, but also practices that emphasize balance, such as yoga, Pilates, whatever it may be, can also help you to hold your center even when the floor feels like it's shaky. And also you can refuel your life force essentially by clarifying the terms of engagement whenever you do engage with others. And even if the other person may be confused, at least you can be clear with how you engage, but also use relationship friction or people management as sort of this resistance training for your own character where possible, and let people inspire you even if the interactions aren't optimal. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of either codependent exhaustion, but also shadow boxing, maybe fighting a war against an enemy that isn't really there. And so you don't want to leak your energy into a void if it doesn't belong there. You want to spend that towards the good stuff, but the danger is also losing your identity by constantly adjusting to the blurred lines of others. However, the potential is really the mastery of either strategic alliances, but also healthy boundaries. And so you can learn to manage your energy and navigate complex human dynamics with a new sense of direction at this time. And you can emerge as somebody who's not just fueled by others, but who uses that energy to make a difference with others without sacrificing yourself, really finding a fuel source that is purely dependent on yourself, which can carry you so far, no matter what the state of the world is. Mars in the 8th house, your fuel source is intensity, deep exchange, and the mechanics of merging. And so you are driven to merge, investigate the taboo, and facilitate transformation no matter how that looks. And so you can generate energy when dealing with high stakes, whether it's shared resources, emotional crisis, or intimacy. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction could represent like this sort of congestion in your pipeline. And so you are driven to merge, yet maybe the outlet for that merger is either dissolving or it feels blocked. And so your fuel might drain because the deep investment you want to make feels a little bit shaky, and the trust required for your engine to ignite might feel absent, potentially leaving you with a high pressure buildup of intent, kind of like a pressure cooker that's sealed and you feel that pressure boiling up. And so physically, this can feel pretty intense. You could feel the pressure deep in your lower gut, maybe your pelvic floor, and it can feel like holding everything in, really creating a sensation of heat or tightness down low. And your body could also stay on edge, really bracing for a threat that isn't there, really leaving you feeling, like your nervous system is being shaken, maybe exhausted, yet unable to actually let your guard down. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, you must practice energetic alchemy. And so your fuel will recharge when you engage in cathartic release that really surrenders to the flow of what your body and soul are like telling you to do. So let yourself sweat or scream or engage in deep tissue work to manually move out the stagnation in your body, but also investigating the occult or the hidden mechanics of your own psychology could provide a safe target for your drive. Really digging into your own shadow is safer than digging into a dead-end situation with force that is outside of your control, trust me. But also you can refuel by cutting cords. Actively withdrawing your energy from shared entanglements really allows you to repressurize your own system that isn't dependent on anything. And so the warning of this transit is the risk of obsession or total withdrawal due to being overwhelmed. And so if this high, pressure energy doesn't have a place to go, it could turn inward, really leading to an intensity that won't leave your body. But the potential of this transit is the power of resurrection, and you really have the capacity to turn intense energy and transmute it into your own power. And so you are learning that you can survive the dissolution of any external support system by being the manager of your own power. And so you can emerge from this transit with sort of this, fearlessness, and you can really refuel your capacity that can help you energize you in every area of life, even in the face of crisis. No matter what happens, like you are the creator of your own power, and that is what you have the potential to discover at this time. With Mars in the 9th house, your fuel source is meaning, higher learning, no matter how that looks, and the quest. And so you are driven to explore new horizons, really propagate your beliefs, and to seek truth. And you can generate energy when moving towards a future vision, maybe learning something foreign or stepping outside of your comfort zone. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction can act like a fog on the mountain. And so you are driven to grow, yet the flight path could be grounded and the destination could be a little bit obscured. And your fuel source could dry up if you feel like you've lost the why in your mission. And the inability to move physically or the confusion of a specific belief system might leave your engine feeling a little bit stalled. And you could also feel a frantic need to escape the mundane, but every exit door seems to lead you back to the same room, so it could feel confusing. And so physically, you could feel a restless energy, like your muscles are aching to run, really making it hard to sit still. But you could also feel physically trapped or suffocated with a desperate need for fresh air. But you could also, wake up feeling heavy or groggy on the other end of the extreme. But regardless, I'd pay attention to the effects of the stagnation and see how that affects you. And so to handle the energy and make the most of this transit, you have to shift your trajectory to go deep rather than to go far. And so your fuel recharges when you treat the quest as this more internal mission. And since you cannot conquer new horizons as easily, very physically right now, it can help you to conquer new concepts mentally. And so engage a new study, learn a difficult language, or commit to a disciplined spiritual practice that provides the expansion that Mars really craves without requiring a plane ticket. And so move your body and nature as well, even with short hikes, and this can satisfy the somatic need for an ascent. But also you can refuel your body by finding meaning in the immediate struggle, because it means your fuel source can be derived no matter what the state of the world is. And so the warning of this transit is of dogmatic fanaticism or escapism, really running just to run, or exhausting your fuel sources or resources on a journey that has no map. You do not want to cling rigidly to a belief just to counter the confusion, but the potential of this transit is the attainment of true wisdom, and you can move beyond theoretical knowledge to gain experiential wisdom through endurance. And you have the opportunity to find a fuel source from something that nothing can stop, really helping you emerge as someone who can derive meaning and motivation through living by your embodied wisdom. Mars in the 10th house, your fuel source is ambition, mastery, leadership, and public legacy. And so you are driven to climb or build an impact that can withstand the test of time and assume authority of your own life. And so you can generate energy when you actually see the results of what you are working coming to life. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction will affect the peak of your chart, which acts a bit like a fog rolling over a mountain summit. And so you are driven to take charge of your life, yet maybe structures of authority could feel like they are dissolving or rigidifying, and your fuel source might drain because the rules of the game change constantly, and the drive could stall when external markers of success become a little bit unreliable. And so physically, this tension could settle in your knees, your joints, or even your bones, and it can feel like stiffness in your knees or your back, almost like you are physically carrying a heavy weight. And it's also a compressive feeling, really making you feel heavier, like gravity is pulling on you harder than usual. And so just pay attention to if your joints feel locked up, because maybe this could be draining you. And so to handle this energy and make the most of this transit, you have to redefine your fuel source to come from within. And so your fuel recharges when you execute your duties on your own terms, simply because that is your standard, regardless of the result. And so maybe try to engage in physical activities that make you feel powerful, such as weightlifting or rock climbing, to really remind your body it can handle any pressure the world gives you. But you can also refuel by becoming the captain in the storm. And so the chaos gives you a chance to demonstrate a level of calm leadership, even if you're just by yourself. But this could actually reinvigorate you or motivate you to push past any obstacle, because you now trust yourself to do that more. And so the warning of this transit really involves the risk of burnout or a fear of a public fall, really caused by being too rigid for what you go for. And you could also work yourself into physical burnout, trying to prove that you are still a go-getter in a broken system if you're not careful. Or you could just fear chasing your goals and not go after them altogether because you feel kind of paralyzed. But the potential is finding a way to reach your goals that really fuels you instead of draining you. And you have the opportunity to build a reputation based on your own terms and your own personal efforts. And you also have the opportunity to find out how to care for your body and to only exert your energy in ways that are aligned with your soul, which can really help you sustain your energy in ways that you never knew was possible. With Mars in the 11th house, your fuel source is future vision, collaboration, and the electricity of a group or a cause. And so you are driven towards visions, networks, and push the collective forward. And so you can generate energy when connected to a hive mind or working towards a goal or cause that is larger than yourself. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction could act as sort of a static field, really disrupting your connection to a bigger source. And so you could be driven towards groups or causes, yet the community could feel heavy or confused in some way. And your fuel source might drain because the signal you rely on feels jammed, and you can send out a call to action and you could receive silence, or maybe larger networks that fuel you might not fuel you as easily now. And this drive can stall if the group dynamic really becomes a drain rather than a battery, potentially leaving you feeling isolated or drained. And so physically, this tension could be felt in your ankles and within your circulation in general, and you could feel very wired but tired with random muscle twitches or palpitations because your system is running on high. But it could also feel a little bit like dissociation, like you are hovering slightly outside of your body because the world around you feels a little bit too heavy to land in. So pay attention to those sensations. And so to handle the energy and make the most of this transit, practice selective connectivity, because your fuel can actually recharge when you disconnect from the macro level and focus on a cause or a group that you can easily and readily connect to. And you need to earth your energy very physically as well. So maybe try walking barefoot or gardening or using weighted blankets that could help you connect to yourself to ensure that when you do extend your energy, it is a good use of that energy. But also collaborating or engaging with small trusted groups with a set, clear vision can help you stay connected to your vision. And you can also refuel by acting as a creator or at least an engager with a cause rather than being a soldier for a cause with no other roles within that, which can help give your Mars a target that will no longer drain it. And you can use this energy and apply it to any area of your life, not just 11th house pursuits. And so the warning is the risk of feeling cynical or becoming a rebel without a cause, because you could feel tempted to cut cords abruptly or disrupt things just to feel connected to something. But the danger also lies in losing faith in humanity because the group mind is currently struggling. But the potential is becoming a visionary strategist because you are uniquely equipped to see patterns in the noise. And you can use this to build or engage in new communities or inspire action in your own way, really sourcing your fuel from the possibility of what comes next, which can fuel you in every other area of your life. With Mars in the 12th house, your fuel source is inspiration, solitude, and the unseen. And so you may be driven to explore the subconscious, heal, and work from the shadows. I know a lot of people with this placement struggle to tap into their energy, but you can generate energy when you are in a flow state, unobserved, or even acting on intuition. And that kind of goes against what you think energy would look like. And I think that's why so many people struggle with it when they have this placement. And so the Saturn Neptune conjunction could feel a little bit like your drive and your energy is being overwhelmed by forces that are both seen and unseen, kind of like that volume is turned up. And so you may be driven to navigate the dream world, or you could be driven by the dream world, yet the waters could be rising and the exit feels sealed. You could feel trapped in some ways. And your fuel source might feel overwhelmed by collective psychic debris, or you could absorb the fear of the world as if it were your own. And so the drive could stall because you feel overwhelmed, where you cannot tell which energy is yours versus what belongs to the outside world. Physically, this tension could be felt in your feet or maybe in your immune system, and you could notice that your feet are swollen or tired, or you could just feel very puffy or sluggish, like your body isn't draining toxins fast enough. But it could also bring a heavy, sleepy feeling, almost like you've been sedated. But you could also feel very thin-skinned, where loud noises or bright lights actually hurt physically, making you want to curl up. So I would pay attention to how your energy is spent at this time. And so to handle the energy the best you can and to really make the most out of this transit, I would treat surrender as if it were an active martial art. And so your fuel can recharge when you engage in solitary, nonlinear movements such as swimming, yoga, or dance, really allowing energy to flow without hitting a wall. But also rest could become your primary workspace. So prioritize rest, even if you have to do it incrementally throughout the day to really process the data you absorb. But you can also refuel by working in total secrecy on something. So maybe working on a project that nobody knows about gives Mars an outlet for your imagination, which could not only refuel your 12th house pursuits, but it can refuel you in so many areas of your life. And so the warning for this transit is the risk of escapism or checking out because the energy is too overwhelming, which trust me, I get it. And you could find yourself acting against your own interest because the subconscious drives are very clouded at this time. However, the potential for this transit is the attainment of magical agency. And so you could learn to affect reality from the inside out, and you could become the secret agent of the zodiac, really dissolving obstacles through your intuition and through behind the scenes maneuvering. I can't promise this will be easy, but at the very least, you can learn to be effective, and you can emerge with a fuel source that is virtually inexhaustible because it draws from the universal well, which can help you better exert your energy in ways that you were not previously able to access. And this is the ultimate goal.